Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Digital Nomad World weekly series. I'm Becky, and I'll be your host. And today we're going to be talking about should you be a slowmad or not? And maybe you don't know what I'm talking about, some of you out there, but we're going to get into it with my guest, Palle Bo, host of the Radio Vagabond Podcast. Palle Bo, welcome to the show.
Hi, Becky. It's been a while.
It has been a while. Do you want to share with everybody how we met, when we met, if you
Yeah,
if you remember?
we met on the Nomad cruise. So yeah, blame it on the cruise. I remember that you did a cover song on the talent show where it was not blame it on the what's the original? Blame it on the booze. It was
Juice.
juice.
It was a cover of Lizzo's Juice. Yeah, and
Yeah, yeah.
Juice kind of rhymes
And
with cruise, right?
it was really great, and you knocked the roof off the big theater when you went on stage and sang that. So yeah, we met on the cruise, and you were a guest on my podcast, and I do believe I a guest on yours as well.
You were my very first podcast, The School of Travels, and now we're doing Digital Nomad World, and I wanted to share a different aspect of your travel life with people on this show. So for anyone who
Okay.
wants to see our original, go back to The School of Travels, look up Palle Bo. But yeah, Palle Bo, since I've seen you, you have just continued to travel really fast. Before we get into that, though, can you tell everybody about your background and how you got started being a digital nomad?
Yeah, the thing, Becky, is that I never did the typical gap year of traveling around the world. So I did that after I turned 50. I got into a career, was taught how to be a graphic designer, and then I found my real passion, which was radio. So I got into radio when I was 19 or 20 years old or something like that, and it was just so fascinating. So I built a career in radio, and then I got a family with two wonderful kids, and so and I loved my life. It was a great life. But then all of a sudden I could see, okay, in 2016 the youngest is going to graduate and move out of the house, get her own place. So let me go travel for a couple of years. So I started planning. That was uh, yeah, in 2013, and I could see that she would graduate in 2016. So I was planning for 2 years, really detailed planning my 2 year trip around the world. In fact, in the beginning, I called it Around the World in 80 Weeks because I thought it sounded funny. Um, and then she graduated, she moved out of the house. I sold my house and my furniture and all my stuff. And at the age of 51, I started traveling. And what I thought would be 2 years, maybe 4 years, has now been 8.5. And I feel I've only just started. I have no plans on getting back home again.
Wow. So I met you 5 years ago. And so you were, I guess, still then a digital nomad baby in a way
I
at
was
that
a
time.
rookie. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Up until now, I've been to 124 countries. I say that I am trying to get to every country in the world, but I am not doing that much new. Keep going back to places I love, and I do a few new every year. So it's not like I'm rushing from country to country just to tick off boxes. I'm basically enjoying my life, and if I'm 10 countries short when I'm 95, I can always say it's still my plan, young lady.
Do you remember how many countries you'd been to before you sold your house and
In fact,
prepared?
yeah. And that was exactly 101 less than now. So I've been to 23 countries back then. Of course,
Wow.
most of Western Europe, and a few exotic places as well. I'd already by then been to Iran and Iraq and India and the US. But yeah, now I've been to 48 US states, so I only need Alaska and Hawaii so to get them all. So that's also kind of a goal for me.
Absolutely incredible, Palle Bo. So, okay, 101 countries in 8 years. How fast are you traveling? Okay, we're going to get into now this like idea of a slow mad versus would you call yourself a fast mad? I didn't want to say go mad because that sounds a little.
or a bromad. No, that's a
Yes.
bad term. That's definitely a bad term. Um, I, uh, I travel much faster than most nomads. When I was in Bansko a year and a half ago, I interviewed a bunch of nomads, and everyone said, "Well, I stay at least a month and preferably 3 months in the same place." And at that time, I just came out of 2022 where I actually counted how many times I moved. And I stayed in 105 different places in 1 year. And I was in 30 countries. If I count the countries I went back to more than once, it was 37 countries. So, yeah, that was a bit of a crazy year. But it felt right for me. Sometimes when I travel too fast, I need to slow down. I'm not appreciating it enough, and that sends a signal to me that I should slow down. So I am traveling faster. This year I had been traveling a bit slower, but here's the really weird part. I was 3 months in Buenos Aires. And in those 3 months, I stayed in 9 different Airbnbs. So I still get to pack and unpack. And most of my nomad friends, they say, "Oh my God, that's an afternoon I'm not getting back. So I'd rather stay in the same place." But I like to see new parts. So now I know all the different neighborhoods of Buenos Aires, and the same. I was 4 months in Toronto, and there I stayed in 10 different places with some friends and some Airbnb, and then I did 6 different house sits. So I did a lot of jumping around from place to place in Toronto as well. And those two cities are cities I really, really love. They're definitely in my top five of places. And and still, I like to just hop a little bit around, so I stay in different places. So this year, I think I'm only gonna hit around 75 different places. So yeah, definitely a slow year for me.
Only 75, Palle Bo. Well, so are you moving, I guess, on average, like every week, or it really
Yeah.
varies, like every few
Well,
days?
one of the reasons the number sounds crazy, I did a lot of road tripping. So a lot of those were just 1 or 2 nights at the same place. And then I stayed longer. In that crazy year, I even stayed a full month in the same place in Koh Lanta in Thailand. And actually, here I'm in Chiang Mai right now. And in a few, yeah, next week, I move into a co-living space where I'm going to be staying for 2 months in the same place. And that is the first time in my 8 years of travel I'm staying at the same place for 2 months. So that's crazy for me.
Wow. I mean, why do you think it is that you feel comfortable traveling so fast when so many others are traveling slower and slower? It tends to be what happens the longer you're a digital nomad.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can see that I am slowing a little bit down with those longer stays in the same city, even though I'd still moved around. One of the reasons it happened in Buenos Aires was that what if I don't like that apartment or that neighborhood? So let me just book 2 weeks and then I'll try to extend if I really like it. And once I got there and I thought, yeah, I could stay here a month or maybe even more, then it's always booked out. Then I can't book it. So yeah, that's one of the reasons is, oh my God, what if I end up and then I've committed myself to stay in the same place? And I'm also a little bit worried about moving into that place for 2 months because what if I don't like it there? But it looks nice in the pictures, so I'm really keeping my fingers crossed, and I want to try that, see what it feels like.
Okay, so it's partly a little bit of an anxiety as to whether you're really going to vibe with a place. And so
Yeah.
you don't book so much in advance. Do you usually stay in Airbnbs or is it sometimes hostels, hotels? What's the mix for you?
A bit of, I would say mostly Airbnb because I like to have my own space with a kitchen, especially if it's more than a week. Then I like to have a place where I can cook. But I have stayed in hostels. I was just in Japan, that I know that you love, and there I stayed in a capsule hotel, which was awesome. But I do dorm rooms as well. I do the occasional hotel here and there. I try not to do the chain hotels because you know exactly what it's like. They look the same all over. I try to see if I can live like the locals and just get a small Airbnb. The one that I have here, it's got this living room that's also my kitchen, and it's got a bedroom and a bathroom, and that's it. So very small, but I don't need a lot of space.
Great. Well, I think you have to be adaptable if you're traveling this fast and staying in this many places. So that's
Mm.
good. I think a big question people are probably thinking is like, how are you packing Palle Bo? Like, what are you traveling with? Are you a light packer or are you addicted to packing? I'm not, I'm thinking you might be.
Mm, I wish that I was a backpacker and only could travel with carry-on, but I simply can't. I have a bunch of microphones, not that they're massively huge, but I simply have to have my suitcase with my stuff, and then I have a backpack as well and a computer bag. So yeah, I'm not a light traveler. Sometimes when I'm like in that year, I did a trip in Ghana. So I came to Accra and stayed at a hotel there, and then I was gonna do a trip around the country, and I left my suitcase there, and then did my backpack only traveling around the country, and then got back to my suitcase. So it's nice to do it once in a while, and um, yeah, I envy those people who can do that. I was just in Bangkok and hanging out with our mutual friend Matt Bowles, who's a proud backpacker and team carry on, and I simply do not understand how it's possible. But yeah, maybe
So you
one
do
day
check a bag. You're saying you check one
I do.
bag and you have the
Yeah,
carry-on. Okay. Okay.
yeah.
So I would ask you, as someone who travels slower, if I was team slowmad here, how do you justify paying for all of those extra fees, traveling so often, but also always paying for that check bag?
Yeah, that's money I really hate spending, but it is what it is, and yeah, I've tried, but I can't. I can't do. I need to check a bag. So and it's always up to the limit of how heavy it can be. So yeah.
This does
When
bring me
when
to another question just to ask like
mhm,
about the money side, because I think a big reason people travel slower as digital nomads is they're trying to save money. Is that
yeah.
something you're just not worried about as
Oh,
much?
definitely, and that's one of the reasons I'm here in Chiang Mai because living expenses are so low and accommodation is low, and especially if I book a place for a longer time, it's much more affordable. So yeah, I'm also and also need a place where I need to focus on working. So that's one of the reasons I'm doing a bit of slow stint here.
Yeah. I think that also I find is that when I travel faster, over time I noticed I lost a lot of time just moving to the airports, moving to
Yeah.
the train stations, and I couldn't focus as much and do deeper work. Have you found the same, or how do you deal with those feelings that you're wasting a lot of time by moving so often?
Well, it's actually part of my travel speed. Normally, I kind of compare it to an interval sprint that sometimes I go fast where I don't, and then I plan my work around that, saying I'm not going to be as much available. I'm almost always available, but obviously when I'm doing a big trip, a fast trip, I did one to the stands earlier where I went to four of the stand countries: Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and Kyrgyzstan for a couple of weeks, and I could respond to clients, but I couldn't really sit down for hours on end because I was there and I was not there to sit behind my computer. So then I stay in the same place longer time, really work hard and work long hours, like I'm doing here, and then I'm ready to travel fast again. And also, when I'm out discovering things, if I'm traveling too fast, I see myself not appreciating what my experience is. I did some traveling through Central America at some point. I just did a big road trip of Costa Rica and then came into El Salvador. Was as this amazing beach with the World Cup in surfing was happening, and when I was there, and it had this little city El Tunco had everything I was traveling for, and I was just not appreciating it. And I could feel it. It wasn't like I was hating it or anything. I just, yeah, I've seen something similar before. And that's when, because I know that happens sometimes, and that's when I get a signal to myself, I need to slow down. I need to do nothing and just be bored for a couple of weeks. And then I get hungry again. I need to stay hungry for the experiences. So I don't want to see myself in a place where, what do you mean I have to walk a whole kilometer to see that waterfall that you've been talking about? No, I've probably seen something similar and then skip it. I don't want to be in that situation where because I'm I won't get overwhelmed. I need to stay hungry and see the wonders of this planet that we're on.
Yeah, you don't want to lose that travel fire.
No.
One of my questions for you is about visas. I am American. There are some visas I need to apply for. I know every passport at some points you have to do this. How do you handle going, because you've been to so many countries, continuing to move fast, but also making sure you have the visas that you need to get into countries, especially the harder ones?
Yeah, yeah. Both you and I, we're lucky that we travel with a fairly strong passport, and I think the Danish passport is a little bit better than the American, but we're both pretty
It
good.
is.
And so I do my research and figure out if I need to apply and how to apply. Here's the really funny thing, Becky. I can't get into the US right now.
What? Why not? But you need states 49 and 50. What are you going to do?
Yeah. I did a trip to Syria with Nomad Mania, and it was a great trip. And half of the people in the group were Americans, and I knew if I'd just done 2 seconds of research, I knew that Syria was one of the banned countries. But I thought, nobody's going to see the Syria stamp in my passport. So I was on my way to Puerto Rico, and in Istanbul airport, they went through my passport and saw, oh, what is that? Is that Syria? So, yeah, is that a problem? I think it is. And then they called U.S. immigrations, and 5 minutes later, I got an email from U.S. immigration saying my European ESTA, the visa waiver program that we can get, like just an online visa for the U.S., that had been canceled, so I couldn't go to the U.S. So then I went to Canada instead. I can apply for a regular visa, and I did that in Canada, but the waiting time at the U.S. consulate in Toronto was 860 days. So 2.5 years to get a meeting. So I was actually supposed to go to another conference in Alaska that I had to cancel because I was just not paying attention to that thing. But yeah.
Wow.
Uh,
Well, this is why I was wondering, because sometimes I know there's issues when you try to go to an embassy and get something you think is going to take one day. But I also will say, and people
mm,
listening and watching this, you're going to know the timing of this video. Maybe it's not going to be a problem anymore, Palle Bo. Let's see, based on events that just happened yesterday, 2 days ago with Syria. I don't know. Maybe they're going to start to be seen in a different light, but I'm not
yeah,
sure.
yeah. Maybe, but yeah,
Maybe.
maybe
I hope
they they
so.
d- they did take Iraq off the banned country list like a year ago. So yeah, maybe.
But of course, for everybody listening and watching to this, watching this, like you have to, of course, do your research and check with ESTA. It may
Yeah,
not be an immediate process. So
yeah,
I hope that
yeah,
you can get back in soon.
yeah. And I have bookmarked. I think it's a Wikipedia page where I can just go through the list of countries. It's specifically for which countries does somebody with a Danish passport need a visa for. And actually, I here in Thailand, I just got the new digital nomad visa, the DTV visa. So I can stay for 6 months if I want to. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, congratulations. Visas are important, everyone. It is important to do your research. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So I'm wondering about some of these countries you've been to so many. What are some of your favorites that you can share with us?
Oh, I always dislike that question because it's like I'm choosing between my babies. I've already mentioned Buenos Aires and Toronto as two of my favorite cities, but number one is still Cape Town. It was where I came up with the idea of going traveling as a nomad, even before I knew that was a term called digital nomads, and I keep coming back, and I actually yesterday I was looking at a cruise from Doha all the way to Cape Town that I might be joining and getting back home to Cape Town. It's really my favorite place, and I feel it's the only place where I really felt I could stay here. But I could also mention Australia, New Zealand, many places in Europe, and there are so many places around. And some of the places that really stick out, yeah, Chiang Mai is also one of those places. Is where I've stayed longer time, so I enjoy coming back. I was just back in Siem Reap, Cambodia, before coming here to Chiang Mai, and I'd been there before, and so I want to go back to the places I'd been to and I love, and I also want to go to those places that I didn't really like that much because some of my friends say, "Oh, what do you mean? That's a great place, like Mauritania." It was not. I didn't have the greatest experience, but then I rushed through. I was just driving through on a bad road, trying to not to hit cows and camels on the road, and didn't really see that much. And then I met some of my friends saying it's one of their favorite countries. So now I want to go there and figure out what I missed. And so the more I travel, the bigger the world gets because I want to go back to places, no matter if they didn't make the big impression on me or they made a huge impression on me. So it's really a hard question to say what's your favorite place.
Yeah, and it's as you said, like things are always, it's really a never-ending love affair once it
Mm,
starts, and
yeah,
things are always changing. So, have you ever been to Venezuela, for example?
I have not. No.
I haven't either, but it's a place that, if things were to change, I would
Yeah.
want to be one of the first people there. I want to see the beautiful nature that they have there, the largest or the tallest waterfall in the world, I should say. I've always wanted to go. So
Yeah.
these places, they're always,
Yeah.
in our imagination, and we have to just find our way to get there,
Well,
perhaps by continuing to travel fast.
yeah,
Could you
yeah.
make the case for us for traveling fast versus slow?
Well, I have so much I want to see. So, and it's so there is no right and wrong way of traveling. It's whatever feels right for each person. So I don't want to say do like I do. Do what feels right for you. And if that's really traveling super slow, then do that. And if it's rushing from place to place and trying to set a world record of having visited all the countries in the world in the shortest amount of time, that's not for me because I don't feel I would see enough. But it's whatever's right for each individual, I would say. So I don't really want to make the case. It feels right for me, and when it doesn't, I just change the way I travel and slow down, and I feel I've been doing that this year.
Yeah. And like you said, there is no right way in the end. But perhaps, do you think it was because you had not taken your gap year and you waited until you were 50 to get started? And that's why you felt this urgency. And that's your
Mm.
case as to why
No,
you've been traveling?
no. I don't think that's the reason. I think I would have done the same at that time. It's just what feels right for me. So no, I don't. It's not like I'm thinking, oh, I'm so old that I'm gonna die soon. So I need to hurry.
Yeah, it's true. I used to be a much faster traveler. I don't really know why I slowed down, more the situation of my own, residency in different places. But yeah, everyone watching, I think I would just tell people, just if you feel inspired to travel, it's more important to start doing it.
But I can tell you something that came as a surprise for me. When I was in Bangkok for Extraordinary Travel Festival, I met another traveler from Australia, and she actually rented an apartment in Koh Samui in Thailand. And she's still traveling, but she uses that as a base. Uh, and uh, and that got me thinking, especially when I heard how little she was paying for it. It was so crazy cheap. Maybe I should do that and kind of have a place and then travel backpack only from that place. So it, I don't think that I'm gonna do it, but I am looking into it.
Yeah, it's like the idea of getting a storage unit as well. Some nomads think,
Hmm.
or some already pay for one, but yeah, if you could find a place you could stay and store your stuff, but also sleep in when you were there, that's
Yeah,
a way to save on those luggage fees for sure.
yeah, yeah. So let's see. Maybe we'll have another conversation in a year or two, and it'll have changed completely. But for now, I'm doing what feels right for me.
That's great to hear. Well, I want to ask you about inspirations that got you started. What is your favorite travel book that inspired you? I always love to share book recommendations with people.
Yeah, I found this book when I was planning my trip. I got listened to all kinds of travel podcasts, watched all kinds of YouTube videos about travel, and then I bought all kinds of books. And one book that came to me as an audiobook first was a book by Rolf Potts called Vagabonding. And I thought, oh, that's a cool term, and the book was so good that I had to buy the paper version as well, so I could make notes. So I got both the audio and the paper version, and that actually also inspired me to call myself the Radio Vagabond. That came from that book. It's amazing book about travel and how you can be vagabonding and making it. Yeah, it actually inspired Tim Ferriss to write the 4 Hour Work Week. That was part of his inspiration. That was the book by Rolf Potts, and then Tim Ferriss sold a lot more. It sold pretty well, and I had the pleasure of meeting Rolf Potts at some point and told him this story. So he was on my podcast, and I've interviewed him a couple of times. So really, really great book that I can't recommend enough. It's called Vagabonding.
Wow, it's so cool that it came full circle for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, final question I have for you today is, do you have any tips after all of this travel for people to save money as they go if they decide to be traveling a little bit faster?
Yeah, if they're trying, yeah, I was just about to say, do have longer stays in the same place so you get the monthly discount on an Airbnb, for example. I had a funny thing happening at some point where I had booked a place for 3 weeks, and then I extended it to 4 weeks, and I actually got money back. Uh, 4 weeks was cheaper than 3 weeks, so I got money back from Airbnb for having an extra week. So definitely, if you're traveling slower, do that. What else can I say? Well, uh, go on buses instead of domestic flights if you can. When I went from Bangkok to Siem Reap in Cambodia, I took a bus instead. It would be much more convenient to jump on a plane, but in order to save money, I did the bus, and that was also kind of an experience. And s- see if you can cook for yourself. Um, uh, haggle when it's appropriate, even for an Airbnb. If you found a couple of, maybe a handful of Airbnbs that look kind of the same and equally good, then you can actually write to them and say, do you have a special offer? And especially if you have kind of a social media presence, or you can say, I'll promote you. Or if you're good with taking pictures, you can say, if you give me a better price, I will take some cool photos for you, or maybe help them write a better description of the place, stuff like that. Um, yeah, see if you
Yeah.
can travel off season. There are so many. It's such a deep topic. That's just what comes to mind.
Thank you for sharing those. Definitely helpful for people, especially the ones starting out. Well, Palle Bo, is there anything else you would like to share with us before we go, including where people can follow you?
Hmm. No, we could ramble on for hours about travel, and
Especially with
we
that many
didn't.
countries you've been to.
Yeah, and we didn't even get into how you slowed down and now have kind of retired a little bit in Lisbon. I want to hear about that, but maybe you should be back on my podcast as well.
Happy to join you on your podcast again, Palle Bo. Well, thank you. I will include the links below for those. Just check out the description, and you can also listen to Palle Bo's podcast, the oh my goodness, the Radio Vagabond,
The Mad Vagabond.
the mad, like the go mad. All
The
right,
Radio
well,
Vagabond.
the
Yeah.
Radio Vagabond. Thank you very much, Palle Bo, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much.